Hey everybody, I'm Beato. On today's Everything Music, I'm going to talk about and demonstrate mixing a drum track that was recorded very poorly. So on this particular track, we don't have any room mics and we don't have a separate hi-hat track. So it's going to be very difficult to get a stereo spread and to get a natural room sound, but I'm going to attempt to do so. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing that I've done is to set up a drum sub so I have control of the entire drum submix and a drum ambience track. I haven't put any plugins on or anything yet, but I will do things like put compression on the drum sub itself. So I'm going to go through, listen to the tracks, see what I got. I have no room mics and I have no separate hi-hat mic, as I said. So this is going to be tricky to get it to sound like it's in stereo. So the first thing I'm going to do is just check what the overheads sound like and make sure that I'm going to mix with the audience perspective on this. So this is going to be the drum sub here just with the overheads. So I have the hi-hat coming out of the right speaker. So I'm going to take my two overheads. They're pretty close to being balanced. I'm going to make a stereo track. I'm going to migrate those overheads to a stereo track so I can affect them at the same time with the same plugins. I'm going to defeat the old ones here and hide them. I'm going to rename this as overhead stereo, OH stereo. Okay, so now my overheads are going through the drum sub, which I've just re-engaged here. So now I'm going to pull out just a straight EQ. I'll use the Pro Tools EQ since that's the one that most people have. Now I want to take out some of the low end out of it because I'll exaggerate it a bit here. Now the toms are incredibly loud in the overheads as well. I'm going to start there with taking out a lot of bottom end. I'm at 220 or so. And I'm going to listen again. Now, so right there, the toms have a lot of bleed in them, which I do not want since the toms are really poorly recorded as well. So I'm going to quickly edit the toms and cut them. I'm going to cut the tom tracks. I'll do it like this. And I'm just going to go M to mute these parts where they're not being played. Right amount of time here. Okay, so these are some really bad sounding dead toms. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do to get some ambience out of them. And I'm going to take the toms, I'm going to make a group here. Group toms. So now the toms are grouped, so they can be moved. The volume of them can be moved. Now I'm going to take the snare, take a look at the snare top and bottom. Make sure that they're in phase with each other. There's a snare hit there. The snare top and bottom are in phase with each other. They just don't sound good together. That's an incredibly dead snare. That's going to need to be helped with a sample there. That snare is really thwacky. Sounds like it's getting hit with a wet sock. Doesn't sound natural. Sounds really dead. Now, I'm going to put the snare up the center because it was not centered. I'm going to listen to overheads and the snares, and I make sure they're in phase with each other. Now I'm going to flip the phase. Now, when I flip the phase on the snare on the overheads, you can hear that all of a sudden low end comes back in the track there because the snares and the overheads are out of phase with each other. That's how they were recorded. There it is. So we recovered a lot of our bottom end, and your snare is going to sound much more full anyways, even if it's not a good sound. So right there, we've already discovered that our snares and overheads were out of phase with each other. Okay, so we're going to bring in the drums. I'm going to listen to the kick by itself real fast, see what we got here. Not a bad sound. Got a lot of low end. It's lacking a little bit in the attack. It's got a little bit of mid-range, still a little bit of mid-range honk to it. So I'm going to take out a little bit of mids here. I'm going to boost it. You can hear that very knocky sound. Just going to reduce that a little bit. So here it is. And then I'm going to add a little bit of point to it here. There we go. Now, that kick drum has a lot of bottom end there. It's got a lot of bottom. Kick out mic is got a ton of bottom. I'm listening to them together. And I'm going to look at them, and I'm going to see if they're in phase with each other here. They should be in phase. Looks like they're in phase pretty well with each other. They almost look unnatural because it looks like it's actually been like they slid the kick drum. The kick out and the kick in should not be that close in phase. The kick in out should be actually further back, so it looks like it's been moved artificially, which is not very cool. But that'll work for now. So now I'm going to try and get a little balance of the drum kit. I'm going to bring that. Now I'm going to move my EQ a little bit, see if I can make it sound a little bit more natural. Now I'm going to bring those room mics down a little bit and balance the drum kit. The drag of this is that we're really losing that hi-hat there. Now I'm going to change the snare level a little bit. Okay, so we've got no ambience. So what are we going to do about that? Well, I'm going to set up a drum ambience right now. Let's try something that's pretty that people might have here. I'm going to use just the basic Pro Tools reverb here. So the reverb's going to come in bus 3 and 4 as soon as it loads here. So I'm going to make a send right now of the overheads to the reverb just to see if I can get it sounding like it's a little bit, has some more air on it. No. So I just have a little bit of ambience on the overheads to make it sound like it was actually recorded in a room instead of a dead ISO booth, which is what it really sounds like. So if I mute that track here with the ambience, it gets super dead. So just that little bit of ambience is going to help. Now I'm going to do something with the kick and snare where I'm going to put some, they need some help with some samples. This snare bottom is really, really annoying. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the snare and I'm going to mute the snare bottom mic here. It's really, that snare is so anemic, it needs help. It either needs to be replaced, which I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy the track down. I'm going to pull in a plugin like Trigger. I'm going to call this snare 2 because it's going to be a sample. I'm going to route it also to the bus. Okay, so they're both getting there. Solo it. That's a snare. It's a little bit too metally sounding. Let's try this one. Might be all right. Already sounds fatter. Now I'm going to flip the phase on it. I'm tuning it a little bit. Now, one of the things you notice is it has some snare drags on it. So I'm going to want to compress the actual real snare in here. I'm going to pull in a plugin that actually has multiple, has compression, EQ, everything like that on. Here's the old school metric halo channel strip. So I'm going to listen to the snare. Back off the compression a bit. Now I'm going to make a gate on it. So I've gated it because I want to have the actual I'm going to turn it up a little bit so I get a little bit more of that real snare. I'm going to bring down the overheads a little bit because the overheads are a bit loud. I'm going to go right to a tom hit here and see what they sound like here. I'm going to add some ambience to the toms. I'm going to run them through the same bus so they don't sound bone dry because they really sound bad. So I'm going to go back to this right here. I'm going to loop this drum fill here. Now the toms sound really, that rack tom sounds very knocky. It's got way too much mids in it. I'm going to listen. Sounds really papery right around there. So I'm going to reduce that. There we go. Sounds boxy. That's better. Now I'm going to go to the floor tom. I'm going to need to do a similar thing because that floor tom sounds very boxy as well. Here we go. Okay. Now I'm going to put a little reverb on that snare, make it a little bit longer. Lengthen it with the track. Now Now I'm going to have to bring up the overheads here. Now I'm going to put some compression on the drum sub because it needs to be tightened up. The whole drum kit just sounds disconnected because of the way it's recorded. The compression is going to even that out. I'm going to use a plugin called the Glue, which is a really good drum sub plugin. And it's got a mix control, so you can do parallel compression with it without setting up a different track. So I'm going to bring up a drum sub. Now that brings up the low end a lot more. Okay, that's a good start there. Now that snare has a lot of reverb on it. I'm going to swap it out for a different snare. I'm tuning it to the track here. Try a different one. So what you want to do also is you want to play the snares together and check the phase on them. You want to go with the one that has the more bottom end. So I'm going to take the snare bottom. I don't even need it. I'm going to just take it right out of the group. So we're not even thinking about it. That's pretty good. So that kick's going to need a sample with it too. Once again, I'm going to call it kick 2. I have to copy the track down so it has the source material on it. Drop and drag it here. There we go. I'm going to remember to put it through the sub. I'm going to play the kick in and out, make sure that they're in phase with each other. So when I go like that, they're out of phase. You can hear the low end between the two. So one thing that you can hear is that I'm still hearing the stick drags on the fills here. Like here, listen. Like right there. You hear the stick drag right there? Those are the things I don't want to lose in the performance. So I'm not hyper gating it. I could gate it a lot more than that, the snare drum. I'm really compressing it to get some of that thwack out, and I might bring some of that top end out so it doesn't. Pretty good. Now, typically, I'm going to have bus compression on as well. So I'm actually going to put a bus compressor on the mix right now. since it's going to go through that anyways at a certain point, I usually like to put the bus compression on right at the beginning. I'm going to use a compressor. Let's see here. A McDSP compressor. Let's see. McDSP. And the particular one I'm going to use is the ML4000. This is one that Chad Blake, when he mixed a record for me years ago, he uses the ML4000 on his mix bus, he told me. And so without getting into too much replacement of the toms and things like that, I want to still retain, even though it's not a great recording, I want to still retain some of the original elements of this. So the toms, as kind of a last resort, I'm going to go in and replace those toms with some better sounding sampled toms, probably. But I'll try and do it here just as an experiment. I'll mute these sends. I'm going to try with the trigger once again. You know, you don't want to get into a thing where everything just sounds like it's been all replaced. That's one of the tricky things. But I'm going to Yamaha 13. I'm going to copy this track and go Yamaha 16 on this one. So I got a Yamaha 13 and 16 samples. Let's see what these sound like. You go right to a drum fill. Try it again. It's pretty good. The snare sounds real loud, our sampled snare, but once we start adding some, I'm backing it off a little bit. Once we start adding the rest of the instruments in, I'll probably be pulling my samples back a little bit. But they're also going to suck back into the mix. Let me go back and just listen here. I'm going to mute all the things that we had. Mute the samples, and I'll mute the reverb along with the compression, see where we started. This is where we started. And this is where we kind of ended. Okay, I'm gradually disabling all the plugins so that you can hear what it sounds like before and after. We have to really see what it sounds like with the track. So the next thing I would do is bring the bass in. But that's going to be all for now. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe here to my Everything Music YouTube channel. If you're interested in the Beato book, you know where to go, to my website at www.rickbeato.com. Thanks for watching.